Absolutely, yeah. Looking fantastic, Ian.
Ha 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 ha. I can't see you, my friend.
I know, I'm got a bit of a shy face.
Okay, so we're live. We're good to go. Everyone's here.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's rock and roll.
Fantastic stuff. So if you are here, please let me know. It was great last week. We had lots of engagement, some great questions. And I'd really like to kick you off this morning with what we've done since last week. Remember, we had some homework and it was more so about the why. Why would you like the podcast? What's your show going to be about? Hi, Beverly. Good to see you here. What's your show about? The duration of it? What type of show is it? Is it an interview show? Is it you just going solo? Is it you capturing stuff on the fly with a portable recorder maybe? And did you look at any of the equipment? Did you maybe jump on Amazon and splash the cash, or do a bit more research? I'd love to know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you today, because if you remember, we looked at a 20-point launch strategy and we perfectly got to point 10 last week, which was awesome. I'm going to now cover off points 11 to 20. Again, please make this a really interactive session and let me know you're here. Ask some questions. Rory might jump in as well and ask a few and give me a little bit of a breather so I can grab a drink. But we'll have some fun, and I hope you're going to enjoy some of the content for you. This content is produced especially for you and Umi. It's not a course out there. It's not something I delivered before. This is really for you. So you've got a secret sauce today. I'm going to share lots of great techniques on how to get that podcast really popping, get it out there, get people listening to it, because you're doing yourself a disservice if you create something really special but no one hears it. So let's look at that. So I'm going to click share my screen with all of you, and we will share this screen here. Okay. Hopefully you can see that there. If someone lets me know in the chat, I'm going to be monitoring the chat as well alongside. So let me know. Okay then, so as you know, my name's Ian. Do I need to do a little bit of a intro again, do you think? So my name's Ian, and I'm the host of a podcast called Industry Angel. As you might remember, I've been podcasting for about 5 years now. Had a really interesting journey along the way as well, and I want to share some of that journey with you today. But if there's anything that you'd like me to answer, sorry, I'm just looking at the chat box whilst we speak. Anything like me answer about my journey, just go for it. Just really go for it. Okay, I've just got a question there. Only found out this course yesterday. All right, first session. Okay, Rory, you can sort that one out. Right then. So key takeaways, if you remember last week, we spent a bit of time looking at the hardware options. We looked at the budget and the premium options, because what I don't want you to do is run away and purchase a lot of equipment and then for you to pod fade, because podcasting is not for everybody. And podcasting does take up a lot of your time. If you remember, I think I mentioned about 1 day a week for this particular podcast, which is a weekly podcast. If you don't have 1 day a week and you maybe have 3 or 4 hours, you could do a monthly podcast. Do what you can, as long as you're putting content out there. And just like anything in life, the more you do it, you get processes and becomes easier. So you might find yourself getting quicker as you go. So we looked at a lot of the hardware options. We looked at particular software. If you remember, we did a on the fly quick look at something called Audacity, which is a way to edit your podcasts and add your little bits of music, which was good fun. We did that. How to promote. So we touched upon promotion, and we touched upon brand. And if you remember, we talked about naming your show, making sure you've got these social channels, making sure you've got your artwork, which is really stands out in the iTunes and the Apple Podcast chart. And engagement. I'll be talking a bit about engagement today. Okay, because the 11th point is plan, plan, plan. This is absolutely crucial before you go live, because you only get one shot in launching a business. You only get one shot in launching a podcast. We want to make sure that you've got everything sorted before you launch. I'm just going to try to pull this Q&A box over here to grab the chat. Okay, see who we've got. Morning, Julie. Great to see you here as well. And we've got Beverly again. Both last week were engaging quite well. So if you're here, let me know, and I'll be really interested to see what you've been up to since last week. Okay, then. So in terms of plan, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get here. We're trying to get number one in this particular chart, which is the Apple Podcasts new and noteworthy. Now, they have changed the way Apple Podcasts work. They keep changing it. You get used to it, just like any of these social channels. You get used to it, you know the hacks, you kind of guess the algorithm, you know all the tips and tricks, and then they just change it on you, don't they? But back when I launched, it was new and noteworthy. Now I think it might be, I don't know, new releases or something like that. But that was the Shangri-La. That's where I wanted to get to, right at the top of there. And I did, and I was there for about 2 years, actually. Strangely enough, the way new and noteworthy worked is you would imagine a new podcast might be, I don't know, a month or two. I was there for 2 years. So I don't think they'd spend too much time changing the chart around back then. So what that gave me was a lot of listeners, a lot of subscribers, because every time somebody hit the business charts, that was the first one they saw. And that was my old cover art, you can see there. So that was great. And that's where I want you guys to get to this morning, okay? Hi, Zena, nice for you to join us today. Now, when I started, and that was my goal, I think I said this last week, I didn't start with episode 1 and then put it into the Apple charts, subscribe to the show. I didn't import my show in with 1 episode. I did it with 5. And if you remember why, it's because when someone subscribes, if you've got 5 episodes, they'll listen to those 5. If you've only got 1 or 2 episodes, they're only going to listen to 1 or 2. So if you've got 20 subscribers and you've got 5 episodes in there, you're getting 100 listens rather than just 20 or 25. So make sure when you launch, you've got that little back catalogue in the can, in your back pocket, ready to submit. So you've got episode 000. Remember the structure. We're not going to do episode 1 because episode 1 will sit next to episode 10 because it's the numbering sequence of 1. We want 001, 002 because we're going to do 999 of these. So remember 1000, which is your why you start the show, what listeners can expect. And then the first episode 001 up to 005, that's going to be your launch strategy. I want you to have 5 or 6 of those episodes ready to go when you submit to your Apple Podcasts, because that's where we want to get to. Okay, then I will have a bit of an iTunes rant or an Apple Podcast rant. I think I did this last week. And you remember what I talked about was being able to gamify this, to pay for downloads. I'm going to talk a little bit about people who already have an audience. So for instance, what they'll do is if they're already famous before starting a podcast, they can leverage on that experience, that connections. So for instance, they'll pick a topic. Okay, there's some of the regular ones, and they'll be backed. Just like business, they might take an investor, or they might be backed by a large corporation. I don't know if anyone's listened to Spotify, but I'm always seeing Steph McGovern's podcast at the moment being pushed on Spotify. So what you'll find is these big corporations, I think it's a BBC podcast, that particular one, they'll be getting pushed. They'll be getting investors behind them, and they'll be paying to get in front of us to gain subscribers early on. As solo podcasters or indie casters, we don't have that luxury unless you've got a nice little nest egg under your mattress that you might want to use. So we've got to try to do what we can. Okay. The platform. So what we're talking about here is big personalities with, presence and audiences already. They might have a large email list, for instance, which they can then push out the podcast link to. There might be a bit of an influencer on social. They might already have a YouTube channel. Okay, so they might be able to, once they're talking about, when they're talking on YouTube on their video, they might say, check out in the show notes, here's my new podcast. You can even listen to the audio of this video in the podcast. I see this more and more often now. I was talking to somebody recently, and they were listening to the Chat Off His Dinners. I think it was Max Brannan, the gingery type. I think he shaves his head. He's really into boxing. So he now has a boxing podcast. I think he did a couple of white collars, but of course now he's on EastEnders. He has a bit of an audience. He might be a bit of a semi-influencer, if you like. They can leverage that. We mustn't have that, but those aren't excuses. That's what I'm trying to get to you. Just because other people can leverage, we got to start somewhere. So don't let that put you off. Okay, there's enough to go around. Beverly asking there, is there any value in launching the whole catalog at the same time? You could do. Sometimes it might be a bit spammy. That's a great question. During lockdown, I'll talk about this later on, but for one day, I did 16 speakers back to back, and I chopped those up as audio podcasts. Now, I could have released them all in one day, but if you subscribe to my show and then suddenly you get 16 episodes of my podcast, it might be a bit overwhelming. And I know somebody's done this over lockdown as well, that it did a daily show. And to be honest, because I'm not commuting, which is where I normally listen to my podcasts, they were backing up, and I actually got a little bit sick of it. And I didn't listen to them all. I was deleting them because the storage on my phone was getting maxed out. I was losing the podcasts that I love in the ether of lots of different lists. So to be honest, I wouldn't spam people like that. What I would do is just release 5. Good question. We'll keep them coming. So this is what we want then. When we're looking to create the podcast, we want consistency, okay? So I believe if you've got good content and you're consistent, and you've got a good community behind you, you can engage. You can get that engagement, and that's what we want. That's what we're looking to achieve. It's interesting because people will look for your podcast. So I'm not really strict that Tuesday at 10 o'clock a new episode lands. I'd love to be, but life doesn't work like that for me. Business gets in the way and you've got to pay the bills. So that's fine. But if it's a weekly show, I'll make sure it goes out weekly. But sometimes I've left that 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks, actually sometimes 3 weeks, maybe once or twice across the last 5 years, because something happened, might be a holiday, family issues, business, whatever. And it's amazing how many lurkers there is who will message you and say, Ian, you haven't put a podcast episode out. Is everything all right? What's going on? Has the show died? Are you okay? And so it's amazing that you have a lot of people who listen to you, but you probably don't ever know about it. So consistency is key. Okay, then I think I touched upon this last week, but this is the currency for gaining exposure and getting up the charts, okay? In terms of where the algorithm works, I suspect it doesn't go on downloads alone. I suspect it goes on how many people will click subscribe as well. Because we could all listen to maybe one of my episodes today, right? I just launched one yesterday, I think. We could all listen to it right now. I probably wouldn't go up the charts because you haven't subscribed. You've just listened to that one show. But if you subscribed and you listen to the show, I think that's a bit of a magnifier for the algorithm. And then if you also rated 5 stars, if you also rated the show and reviewed as well, that's more currency, that's more apple juice, if you like. It's going to push you at the charts. So this is what we're going to try to ask people to do. I touched upon this last week as well. When you're watching YouTube, they'll often ask you to, click subscribe, click the bell so you get a notification. It's the same with a podcast. If you can drop it in at the end of the show or midway through the show, whatever you want. If you've enjoyed this, be sure to share it with your friends, tell somebody about it. And, I'd love it if you could drop me a review. It really helps the show grow. It costs you nothing. And I'd be really appreciative. I don't do that too much, but humans like to be led by the hand. It's a bit like social media. If you say to somebody, could you share this episode for me? They will share it, but they probably won't if you hadn't asked them. Just like saying, please retweet this. So be sure to ask. It's fine. You're doing this at no cost. It's not costing the listener anything, but it comes as a cost to you. It's an investment in time. And if you're creating really great content, then surely they can just give you something back in terms of review. So that's my little call to action for you guys, if you've enjoyed this. So that's what we're looking for, reviews. Now, here's a nice little graph, because don't get too disheartened about what I said about those big investors, because you can see that the largest amount on the bar chart there is 62% of people who produce their own podcast independently. So they're actually being everything. You remember last week I talked about producing team, people who look after your social, who book the guest, who interview, who edit, who then serve it up onto the majority of people are doing all of that. Okay, so don't get disheartened. But these are the things you're going to have to do, and this is the time you're going to have to put aside. Okay. Now, create a tribe. Create a tribe is really important. You want loyal fans. Be sure to put something in the comments as well, in the chat box, if you want a question. We're looking for loyal fans here. And you might have heard of a chap called Dale Carnegie, and he wrote a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. What Dale said was, a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Now, if any of you are trainers or coaches, teachers, vloggers, podcasters, whatever, you'll know that using names can be really powerful, especially in a classroom environment. If you're coaching or if you're training a large, a room of 30, 40 above, if you're using people's names, it really gets their attention. I do that a lot on the podcast. And it's a bit like what you probably noticed when you become the chat. I'm acknowledging you, that you're there. I'm engaging with you. I think that is so important. And I'm not going to say it's a mistake not to do this. You can run your show the way you want to. But sometimes I'll watch shows live on Facebook, for instance. And I'll be like, hey, Tony, I'm back again. Lovely to see you. You're looking well. Just nothing. I'll receive no response. I really think that you should be monitoring the people who engage with you, because they're your tribe, and without them, you're nothing really. You're just creating content and putting it out there for no one to listen to. So using their names is great. What I do, any messages I receive, I will mention them at the start. So I'll give shout outs and I'll say, Beverly, great to hear from you this week. Thanks so much for engaging, and thanks for supporting the show going forward. Best of luck with whatever, because no doubt they tell you things. They'll say, I listened to that episode on 10 tips for entrepreneurship. It was really good. Item 5 was perfect for me because it's really helped me do X, Y, Z in my role. I'll mention that. So if people are reaching out to you, acknowledge it, because they'll come back for more. And it's quite nice to hear your name over the podcast. So engage with your tribe. Now, I took this a step further. What I did was I started to take this show live. I started to take it on the road. And I thought, if people are listening, especially in the Northeast where I live, if people are listening here and they're engaging, I'm just looking at the photographs because it makes me smile, because we have so many great times, great nights. If they're engaging, why not get them together and let's do this live? Let's actually meet these people in person and let's have a great show together, because it's ours. This is not my podcast. I will always say that. It's theirs, it's yours, it's the tribe's. And they can push and pull and coerce me any way they want. And I love that feedback, because sometimes I'll have a rant. I said that last week. I'll pick up my portable Zoom recorder. I'll capture audio on the fly, changing things up every week. They love that, So if I'm doing an interview or a solo or a 10-minute or a 30-minute, and just messing around and changing stuff, your tribe will tell you what they're like. And there's no better way to engage them than actually meeting them in person. Now, Beverly asks, what is the best way for people to engage with you? For me, I love being there on social. I love doing Facebook Lives now. So I'm doing the show via Facebook Live and recording the audio. But, Twitter for me is my chosen weapon, if you like. I love being on Twitter and I love engaging. And it's your tribe. You've got to treat them. You've got to treat them well, okay? You've got to put the time in. I'll have a bit of a rant here. There's somebody I know who is a really good vlogger and podcaster in the States. His engagement is terrible. I've even direct messaged him because we follow each other and not had a reply. I've actually met him in person. They always say, don't meet your idols, don't they? I've met him in person. He was really uninspiring. So from an authenticity point of view, he comes across really well, but actually in real life, he wasn't like that person. I think you've got to be really true to yourself, Beverly, and start to engage authentically. And you asked there, what if you don't have time? That is a really good point, but you have to put that time aside. It's a bit like, if you put your head above the parapet, you're going to get people who will contact you and who will reach out to you. They've took the time to reach out to you, so you have to put the time aside to answer them. And if you don't, they'll actually start getting a little bit annoyed, just like the chap that I was talking about there. It's a bit disheartening when you share something from the heart sometimes as well. Like, you really inspired me. You've really changed the way I work now. And you've shared something and then no reply. It's a bit gutting. Can one limit the engagement to email only? Yeah, I do. That's what I often say this, Beverly, on the show. I'll often say, if you want to reach me, you can email me, host@industryangel.com. I see all your emails. I will reply to all my emails. I'll get through them all. So yeah, I use email quite a lot, but I do love Twitter just for the crack as well. So yes, you see in there, set aside a time to respond on a regular basis. I love that. So from a productivity point of view, Beverly, if you are podcasting, being quite stringent with your blocking out your calendar would be a great way to do that. So in terms of interviewing the guest, editing the guest, social media time, you could block those out in your diary. So that was a really good way of doing it. The only thing is, the listener might wait a week or two or a few days before you get back to them. So, but you can't do everything. Feedback is a gift that needs grateful response. Yes, Jane, I totally agree. And I tell you what it is, Jane, I've had negative feedback. I don't mind telling you. Once you put your head above the parapet, as I say, 99.9% of people will love what you do. They'll give you good feedback. If they don't love what you do, they probably won't contact you. But there's a very small percentage who will actually contact you and just say, what were you doing there? Why do you think you can do that? And actually, I love that, because that feedback helps you change and helps you take action from that. So for instance, there was one chap, and I did a show about Brexit. And now, Brexit was a real talking point at the time. And I got somebody who was anti-Brexit, I think it was at the time. And somebody reached out and said, okay, you've done one side of the fence, Ian. Let's hear the other side, because I'm pro-Brexit. So why didn't you have somebody on? And, I think you were banging the drum and you didn't sit on the fence. You seem to be anti-Brexit. And actually I took great feedback from that, because I thought, yes, it's my job not to take sides. It's my job to ask the awkward questions sometimes and gather the information for the listener. So I then tried to hunt down someone who was pro-Brexit, but I couldn't find somebody. So, yes, I'm rambling a little bit, but you're dead right. Take on that feedback. It's great. Julie asks, is the email hosted separately or on via the podcast site? Yes. So I've got industryangel.com, and along with my hosting package, I've got the web and the email. So yeah, both are hosted together. How do you make sure that the content is accessible? Interpreters, transcripts, captions, teaching. Excellent question, Joe. That is really good. What Joe's asking there is, in terms of accessibility for people, how do you make sure that everybody gets a chance to listen or to read? Because we talk about transcripts and captions. I would love this show. I would love my show to be transcripted. There are people who will do that for you. There are websites who will do that for you that you can pay. And with a bit of artificial intelligence, it will listen and then give you the transcript back. There are people on Fiverr.com who would listen, type it up for you as well. That would be fantastic for inclusion, to make sure that happens. For me at the moment, it's audio only. It's visual sometimes through the live channels as well, through the social channels. But transcripts would be great. Transcripts are also very good for search engine optimization as well, because obviously all your keywords are on your website and searchable. Okay, Zena, you've uploaded your introductory episode as 00. Is it too late to change it to 000? I've not launched yet. It was just something for my RSS feed. So I'm guessing you probably use something like Libsyn, Zena, maybe. Just go in and edit that episode and just call it something different. Libsyn has a way of doing that. Yeah, great stuff. You can do that on Libsyn, no bother. If you remember last week, what I mentioned was Apple Podcasts don't like you to put the episode in their title. They don't like 001 episode, 001 how to produce a podcast. They just like how to produce a podcast, and you put the 001 in the Libsyn feed title. So make sure you don't put it in there. So yes, great stuff. Keep the questions coming. So just going back to the tribe, try to think about where this show might end up going. Enjoy the journey. Don't try and plan it too much. Don't try and plan an event if you've just launched episode 5 because you don't have a tribe yet. It's up to you to create your tribe. You've got to reach out on social. You've got to do the networking. You've got to, have a business card. Maybe on my business card, I've got my company, Far North. On the flip side, I've got Industry Angels. So it's like a double header. It's a great talking point. I hand over my business card. Inevitably, people turn it over and they say, "Oh, what's that?" And I say, "Oh, well, actually, outside of my business, I run a podcast because I'm really interested in entrepreneurship and business." And, "Oh, tell me more." "Yeah, I've had 180 guests and it's really cool." And it's just a really good talking point. So you've got to share your podcast one person at a time. Don't worry about getting it out to 100 people, 200 people. One at a time. It will grow organically, and that one person will tell one person, and so on and so on. Okay, then what we need to do, if this is a guest show, if you're going to bring somebody on, remember this might be a solo show, and that's fine, but shake it up. If it is a solo show, shake it up. Have a guest on your particular topic, or do what I do where there was a hot topic like Brexit, and I thought, no, and I don't know enough about that topic. I need to bring an expert in. So make it easy for the guest. And you've probably done this yourself on email when you're trying to get a meeting and you've said, "I've got Monday, Thursday, and Friday of next week available. Have you?" "Yes, I can do Thursday." "What time?" "I can do 10, 11, or 12. "Oh, I can't do those dates. I can do 2 o'clock. I can't do 2. "What about the following week?" Yada, yada, yada. It just goes on. What we want is some sort of scheduler like this, okay? This is Calendly. A lot of you probably use this. It's getting more popular now as people start getting more efficient with their time. I'll send this link out to the prospective guest and say, "Look, I'd love you on the show. Here's my my Calendly link. Grab a time when it suits you." And you can just see there that I record on a Monday, and this is in July. So pick your time. We are now the 15th of July. If you want to do a podcast with me, you could jump on the 20th and grab me at 10 o'clock. It's as simple as that. It works really well. And within I'm talking about making it easy for the guest. Within the instructions, what you'll find is if somebody has a PA, they'll often come back with lots of questions. And the guest, if they don't have a PA, they'll come back with questions as well. So what I do is I make it really, really easy for them. I think of all the possible questions that they might ask. The big one is audio quality, okay? If people enjoy your podcast and the audio is good, they'll come back for more. I've unsubscribed to quite a lot of podcasts because the audio just didn't cut it. It was just not recorded with a decent enough microphone. There was lots of feedback or outside noise, and I just couldn't handle it. And that's not me being an audiophile. It's because it's very intimate listening to a podcast. You normally is in your ears or in your car, and if you can hardly hear them, you just get sick. So what I say to guests is, look, you can read it there. Audio quality is paramount. Don't just shout at your laptop. You just get yourself a set of earbuds like this with a mic on. This would work fine. I tell them what platform I use. So you might remember last week I talked about Zencaster, which was quite good for recording from a distance, quite often across the pond for me. So I use Zencaster. I tell them to use Chrome. I tell them what the platform actually does. Ask them for a quiet room. Connection speed. If you're going to record this over the internet, connection speed again is something we need. We don't want that stopy-starty Tin Man kind of response. So I've even got a link in there. Look, you can run a speed test at speedtest.net. were looking for over, 1.5 megabytes a second. I'm telling them what they need, because what you don't want is to get there at 10 o'clock on the 20th of July and that person's audio quality be terrible, be cutting out because it's wastes them time, it wastes your time. But actually, that interview might have been your podcast for the week. And this has happened to me where it hasn't worked and I hadn't had any content for that week. So now you're hustling, trying to find a guest to get the content out, because remember, consistency is key. You're hustling to find a guest, or you end up maybe thinking, shall I go solo? Shall I create something myself for 10 minutes? And I've done this. Good, do it, because it might force you to go solo, but don't create content for content's sake. If you can't get that episode out and you've got nothing to say, don't say it at all, because there's nothing worse than a subscriber listen to that particular bit of content and thinking that was just naff, because there's a potential they could unsubscribe. Now, I'm not saying every one of my episodes is good. I try to make it so diverse, and I'm guessing one week it's probably interesting for one and the next week it won't be, but that next week will be interesting for somebody else. So I like to mix it up a little bit, but just make sure the content is decent and you're not just pushing out there for pushing out's sake. And at the end of that bit of text you can see there, what I'm asking them for is their image, because what I'll be doing is creating a little bit of noise on social using their image. I'll probably create a little podcast album cover, if you like. Their bio. So who is this person? That'll often go in the show notes, and that'll often go on places like Facebook. Social links. Now, this is good for them because they want to get something out of this interview. They want to be able to shout about who they are. So ask for their social links. Quite often people will listen to a podcast. So for instance, say I'm interviewing Phil and you listened, you might grab your phone and go, I'm just going to look at the show notes of that. And if you can scroll up and see Phil's LinkedIn or Phil's Twitter, they'll click on it and connect with that person. So make sure you do that. And any links you want to promote. Now, if you are getting a guest on the show, the paramount bit is creating good quality content for your guest. I get that. But remember, that guest has gave you 30, 40 minutes of their time. We need to give them something back. And at the end, if that's 30 seconds to promote a book or promote their course or push the people to their website, then that's a good trade-off. So any links that they want to promote, you can ask them and build that in to your show notes. And that's just good karma. Okay, I'm just going to check the chat box here because I think some stuff's come through. Graham, if you have an outstanding individual within your network who's leading something that is a topic currently, but you don't have a tribe, when should you play that card? Okay, so are we talking about here, Graham, is about leveraging their audience? Is that what you mean? Let me know. Okay, thanks for responding. Diversity, inclusion, hot topic at the moment. Joe, you're dead right. It is a hot topic, and rightly so. Yeah, and that is a tough one, Joe. Actually, not just so much for diversity of listeners, but also of guests that I find. I'm so excited. I've got some really great guests in the pipeline, but it's hard to ensure that your guests do have, and there is a wide range of diversity for guests as well. So yeah, it is a hot topic. So Graham, they have a large global following currently. If they do, Graham, that's great, okay? Leveraging their audience, or do you build your own even though you may miss an opportunity? Definitely leverage theirs. It's a great question, Graham. I'm so glad. I think you've actually saw my slides, my friend, because I'm going to come on to this about leveraging audiences, because it's a great way to grow your podcast. So let me come back to that one. Okay then. CYA, cover your backside. That's what we need to do, okay? In my 180 odd episodes, there's been a couple of instances where I've had to cover my backside on this one. I have had guests come on the show and then want to hear the podcast before it'll be released to sign it off. That is creating way too much work. If you imagine creating a podcast, editing it, getting to the MP3, putting that MP3 on a Dropbox for someone to then pull it down, listen to it and say, you know what it is? about 7 minutes in, could you take that out? You do not want to get that position. It's going to make your editing so hard. Okay. If they come on the show as a guest and whatever they share, that needs to go live. That's up to you to cut out. I have done this in the past where someone said at the end of the interview, or maybe an hour or two later, Ian, I think I shared something about a certain thing. Would you mind cutting it out? Yeah, I can do that. But don't let them get too prissy on this one in terms of my client won't let this go without us signing off. If that's what happens, I'm kind of getting the feeling that they're going to be a little bit of a stickler on this one, and it could get messy. So I don't want to get into that messy situation. But as I say, if someone just says, do us a favor, chop half a minute out, that's going to be fine. I've done that before. But what you don't want is to get to the point where you've edited it and you've got to go back. It's a great question from Beverly there. What disclaimers do you ask your guests to sign? Again, Beverly, you've seen my slides. I'm going to give you a disclaimer to use for your podcast. I've got some words. You're more than free to take them and use them. I'm going to come on to that. So here's how I cover my backside. When I use Calendly and some guests sign up for the 20th of June at 10 o'clock, they put their email details in. That schedules the event. That nicely sends me an email. That nicely sends them an email into their, it can go into their calendars. We're both going to be there. We're not going to miss each other. There's a tick box there. Can you see that? Please click to accept authorization for use of voice and or likeness. They cannot go any further until they tick that box. Just like when you subscribe to terms and conditions on a website and you can't submit till you click it, that's a clickable, that's a must-have click box for me. Just a little bit about scheduling. You'll notice there it's got the time. Just be mindful of your time zone. The way we've got here in the UK in terms of British summertime, things like that, it can mess up calendars. So just make sure you've got your right time zone. So going back to your point, Beverly, here you go, my friend. There is your podcast media release form. Yes, very good for GDPR as well, Julie. You're so right. This, again, if I get a bit of a gut feeling that this is going to go a bit weird, but the guest's great and I really want them on, I'll send this out as a Word doc, and I'll say, before we go any further, could you read this and could you sign off, and we'll both sign it, and I'll get a copy signed, electronically signed by them, and I'll just store this in my file. And I think it's probably in the early days of podcasting. I think there's always a bit of that nervousness about releasing podcasts or having guests on. So you could just use this just to give you that little bit of reassurance that everything's going to be fine. I'm going to pop the link to this if I can. I will do this at the break. Actually, we're going to take a break in 15 minutes. I am going to pop a link to where that text sits, and you can just copy and paste and create your own Word doc from that. In terms of electronic signature, Julie, I've got mine, and you probably, lots of viewers probably have this, where you've signed it and scanned your own signature, and that just sits on my laptop, and I'll just drag and drop that into Word and send it back. I don't use anything like an authorization tool on a website for that. There's no money changing hands. I'm not going to get too hung up about it. Okay, then, I think this is going back to Graham's question about leveraging audiences and their particular social channels. Maybe there might be a bit of an influence on social. What we want them to do is share the episode. We've got to be really mindful of, yes, we're creating something and we want this to grow, and that particular guest might have a really, really strong social presence. We're going to make this super easy for them to share. Okay. So if you use something like Libsyn or any other host, what they'll give you is some HTML code to pop on a website, often to pop on a WordPress website. And that's what it looks like. You can see that little player there. When I interview a guest, I'll thank them, of course. And when the episode goes live, I'll drop them an email. I'll say, thanks so much for your episode. I really enjoyed, our time together. It's a brilliant episode. Here is a link to it, and they'll have their own webpage. Here is a link. Here is the HTML code. You can embed this on your blog, on your website, if you want, to showcase that you've done an interview with somebody. And I'm going to share it on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and LinkedIn. I'll embed the links into there as hot links in my email, so they can just click and go straight through to the channel. And at the end, I'll also say, again, thanks so much, really good. If you could do one thing for me, it'd be really great if you could review the show. And I'll put a link to review the show as well. 50% of the time, they probably won't do it, but you've got to keep asking for those reviews. You've got to keep trying to grow your show any way you can. Okay, Julie's got, what do you use for electronic signature? I meant for the other person. For example, do you ask them to scan and return or use Google Docs? Yes, Julie, what I often ask them to do is just sign it and scan it back to me. Or again, similar to me, if it's a Word doc, they might just drop their signature on as a little PNG file maybe, and just save it and send it to me back. I don't have to have this, level of authorization too hard. Okay. So thinking about the guests then. The guests will share the heck out of this episode because they're getting promotion, okay? They will be seen as an influencer in their particular space. They've often got something to sell, whether that be a book or a course. They might be trying to grow their brand. And there's nothing more kind of powerful than having really good content and being asked to go onto someone's show and then being able to share it themselves. So you might remember I do a nice little album cover for each guest. They love to see their own face on there. Remember, I ask for their bio, I ask for their image. So I'll take that, and they've signed that image off. It's theirs, so they've gave it to me. I'm not just grabbing it off Google somewhere. And I'll create a little album cover. They will share that on social. So be sure to tag them on all the social channels. Obviously, they'll get a notification, and tell them if you want to share it as well. On that email where you thank them and you give them the HTML code, just say, I wouldn't mind you sharing it. I'm going to be releasing this on Monday. I'll be sure to tag you in it. If you wouldn't mind sharing that to your audience, that would be great. So mastering social is something we really have to do. And remember, when we spoke about our audience, we spoke about the customer avatar, the buying persona, the audience persona. Who is that person? We need to understand where they hang out. For my business entrepreneurship show, they hang out on LinkedIn. They hang out on Twitter. So I've got to be really prevalent on there. In terms of social, hashtags, it's probably a conversation in itself, isn't it? Hashtags, and I'm sure a lot of you social experts could tell me a thing or two. Hashtags are great to be found. Okay, LinkedIn, what they say is I do LinkedIn training. What they say is do a maximum of 3 hashtags. Okay, don't do 2, don't do 4, do 3. Just try and populate them on the bottom. Don't make it look too spammy. We're not Instagram here. We're not having 30 tags on LinkedIn. On Twitter, again, there's no limit. So as long as you have a good little bit of catchy blurb at the start, so people will listen, you could then populate if there's any more characters left out of the 280 that Twitter give you, populate with hashtags. What I like to do is just do a Google search on your particular topic. So if it's business, I'll just do a Google search for the hottest hashtags on business right now, and it'll come back and it'll say like hashtag B2B, hashtag B2C. I'll include them in my tweet. If it's LinkedIn, quite often people might search for business podcast or just podcast. I'll be sure to put them along the bottom of my LinkedIn as well. Thing with social is it's really good for being found through hashtags and get them to click through to your website. What we need to do is make this really easy for people to listen. Now, there's two schools of thought here, and I've tested both out. And I'm going to get a little bit techy on you here, maybe. When I tweet, I'll put the image, such as that top one there of Simon, okay? I'd put that image of Simon. I would tag him on Twitter. I would say, this podcast, episode 113 or whatever it is, 116, about marketing, we've asked, is brand dead? And then a hashtag marketing, hashtag podcast, whatever. And I put a link to Simon's particular page on industryangel.com. What I'm hoping to do there is to drive people to the website. When people get to the website, they'll hit Simon's page. They can play it from there, just like that bit of HTML code. They can play it from there, which counts as a download. And also on that page, there's the buttons to subscribe to Spotify, to Apple, to Stitcher, wherever they choose. That's one school of thought. There's a couple of steps in there, isn't there? The other school of thought is when you have a hosting site somewhere like Libsyn, they'll give you that little MP3 address. I could say episode 116 for Simon, is brand dead? I could post that address, that little link, MP3 link. And what it would do on Twitter is it would put a player in there. So people's got your feed, you've come up on their feed, and they could literally click that play button and listen instantly on their desktop or on their phone. Now, here's the quandary. That counts as a listen, okay? If they go over so many seconds, you're going to get a download. The other school of thought is on this one. If they listen and they like it, now what? They've just found you on Twitter and they've listened, but then they don't know where to go now. They don't know where your website is. They don't know who you are. Where do you subscribe? So I do a bit of a mix and match on this one. If my downloads, and I give myself targets, if my downloads for the day aren't hitting where I want them to be, I will do the latter. I will put that link so people can literally play out of Twitter and listen. There's a couple of things here. I want people to play it and listen. I'd love them to come back and listen to the full episode and subscribe. But I'm actually after that download. I'm after that metric. I'm kind of chasing metrics here. And it's not a vanity metrics point of view because no one sees those metrics. But I do. I see the downloads. And remember, we want to get in the charts. So we're hunting for downloads. So if you are struggling with downloads on a particular day, maybe put that player into the social so someone can click there and then and listen to it. I hope that wasn't too deep for you. But these are just some tips and tricks, you know. And again, with Twitter, I'm not going to get too hung up on Twitter. You know, the feed's like 15 to 20 minutes. So don't worry about posting the same episode, 4 times across the day or retweeting your post. That's fine. Again, hit me up on any questions if you want about social. It's something I love to talk about. Okay, then, so we've mastered social media. We've looked at Twitter. I've talked about Twitter and LinkedIn. So as you can see there on this slide, I've got on the left-hand side, that's my Twitter page. So although I've got Ian_Farrar, where a lot of people will come to me and ask questions, I've also got industry_angel. So it's 2 places to be found. The good bit about this is, as you can see there, I've got my domain name. I've got my link to the website. Interesting thing about social is it's I don't want to get too hung up on social because I get too excited, but if you're found on Twitter and you've got a nice bit of content that's engaged, people might click through to your profile and then you'll see the rest of your content. The key thing on that profile is the web page. When they click through to the web page, now they've got more content and more information about you. They've got a chance to subscribe and they've got the chance to see more of your podcasts, episodes, more of your content. So it's a nice little thread, isn't it? We're talking about good bit of content, clicking through to your profile, clicking through to your website, subscribing to the show. That's why we're looking to get onto social. And it's a bit like business, isn't it? You put a blog out on business, you put it on social, they click through to your business, they read the blog and they get in touch with you. or they hit your call to action, which might be subscribe to your email list. It's like a funnel, isn't it? It's like a sales funnel. Again, on LinkedIn, you can see there I have a LinkedIn page for the podcast. I feel that LinkedIn pages don't work very well right now. We are people, we're people to people, we're not business to business. LinkedIn is really good for creating a personal relationship. The only reason I have a web page for the podcast is so I can tag it. And I can tag it on my personal posts. When I tag it, people might click through that tag, and again, they'll see the domain. They might go to the website. So I don't get too hung up about LinkedIn pages right now. Beverly, do you create a business page for your podcast attached to your LinkedIn profile? I think I've just covered that, Beverly. So yes, I do. I've got one for my company, Far North. I've got one for my other company, Carpaway. But I feel that they're just not working right now. People don't click through to your page to look at your content. It's a real relationship. It's a human-to-human approach. So I just have it just so I can tag it. So videos and pictures, of course, on Facebook. We can have videos which are great. I will come on to that shortly, and we can have pictures. I feel the podcast doesn't do too well on Facebook, and I think that's probably my audience. If I was more of a heart-centered podcast, if I was maybe talking about Reiki or yoga or whatever, I think maybe the audience might be on Facebook. My audience are business leaders, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, that sort of thing. So maybe they don't hang out on Facebook. I don't know, but I don't get too much engagement through there. Maybe that's because I don't do enough on Facebook. It could be me. Maybe I need to up my game on that. But I think it's more so that's where my audience don't hang out, if I'm honest. But yours may. But I'm going to tick the box. Remember, when someone searches for this on social, the more results that Google will show, the better for me, Google juice. So if I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, my podcast, the Industry Angel website, I've got a lot more for Facebook to pull back from the search results. So I'm just going to be in there. Joe, let's just read yours. Joe, really helpful. Social seems so complex. Good to know I've got access to some digital and tech support. This program, actually, Joe, that's a really good point. I was reading through the program there just in the interlude before we started. There's so much content coming your way around social. So, be sure to sign up to some of those UMI podcast, UMI workshops. But yes, Joe, person-to-person relationship is so important. And that's why I really encouraged you at the start there to make sure to put the time aside to engage with your tribe. Okay, there's two ends to this telephone. It's not a megaphone. You're not shouting out the window about how great you are and how great your content is and it dying on deaf ears. You're asking people to engage, just like I've done with you all this morning. Let me know in the chat box. It's the same thing on social. Let me know if you love this show. Please share it with your friends. You can hit me anytime on my Twitter feed, for instance, or my email, which is ask me any questions. I see all your emails. I will give you the time. Just engage. Okay then, so we're coming up to 11 o'clock. We're doing great here for timing. So we're gonna maybe take a little bit of a break. Rory, could you kick in, my friend, if you're in the background there?
Yeah.
And give us a break?
Yeah, no problem whatsoever.
Good morning.
Let's have a go. There we go. There we go.
Good stuff. Yeah, we're button 5. Hey, Rory, thanks for that.
No problem.
Yeah, can I share my screen again and I'll be back. Can you see that screen there? If you could let me know.
Yep, spot on, all clear.
Good stuff. Thanks, Rory. Okay, thanks everybody. Great to be back. Let me know in the chat box if you have any questions. You've got me for the next 50 minutes. If I haven't heard from you this morning, just say hi. Let me know you're here. Thanks, Julie, for posting that in there. Lots of keywords in there, yeah? Good stuff. Zena, you have sent me a message on there. I know you mentioned planning the launch. What did you do on launch day, especially during lockdown? So is that episode, I've asked you, is that an episode or your show launch, Zena, if you could let me know. I'm launching a new show. I'm not sure what, good to go, Zena, G2G. So Zena, you're launching a show. What I would do is, in terms of pre-launch, you know, I talked about having those episodes in the can. What we need to do is get some little bit of a momentum. We're going to talk about the show, create some nice graphics, and on social media, you want to have a pre-launch. If you are going to have a website, then great. Push them to the website, have some sort of holding page up there if you can, and try to grab their email address. So at the bottom of that web page, have your call to action. If you'd like to know more, if you want to join our tribe, you're going to learn this, this, and this. You're going to hear from all these great guests. You're going to learn so much, whatever it is. Grab an email address for them. Once you get that email address, you've now got them on the hook in terms of being able to tell them when your podcast goes live, tell them what particular episode goes live. Zena's saying, I've built momentum with my list. I'm just not sure what to do on the day. So on the day, then you just literally press the button. If you've uploaded your episodes to somewhere like Libsyn, which is your hosting site, you can schedule them to go live. So you don't have to physically be there at the time. So you could schedule them to go live. Our schedule might go live during the night, just for time zone issues with the States and here. When you do go live, that's when you smash social. Okay, you're going to be saying, okay, we've gone live. Here's if it's a guest show, you could get them to share it themselves, tag them in it so they know. You could send the guests, if it is a guest show, I'm kind of always assuming it is here. If it is, you could email them beforehand and say, look, we're going to start on Monday. We're going to launch on Monday. If you wouldn't mind sharing when it comes out, I want to try and get as much momentum as possible. If you use LinkedIn, you could say, look, we're going to drop on Monday, and be sure to subscribe to the show when it comes out, that kind of thing. So getting that traction on social is probably where I would say. But if you've got an email list, then great. I don't utilize my email list enough. It's something I would need to double down on. But yeah, take the social. Create that bit of scarcity, isn't it? It's coming soon. And if you do want to create a bit of noise, you could ask for guests. Now, when you pull that grenade and throw it in the LinkedIn field, you are going to get bombarded with people wanting to be on your show or want to be involved, and it's going to get a lot of traction. So, I do take care of that one. It's a bit like asking people on LinkedIn if anyone knows a website developer. They're going to be like circling, they'll smell blood in the sea. So, if you put that post out asking for guests, you're going to get a lot of traction. So, that might be something you might want to think about, because it will get you some decent noise. Peter, good morning, everyone. Virtual classrooms. Just woken up, Peter, well done. If you've got anything to ask me, be sure to throw that out. Okay, then, so I touched upon the social channels. Again, I touched upon the fact I've got Facebook. I utilize it. I've got other links in there. Facebook will give you a nice little cover picture there, which you can use. Just get it out, use it. It's free, isn't it? It just takes time. But to be honest, if you've created show notes, it's just a copy and paste. That's it. If you've created something on your hosting site, I keep saying Libsyn, but it might be something else, SoundCloud, Blueberry, whatever it is. You just literally taking that text and populating it into Facebook, you populate it into LinkedIn and just tweaking it accordingly. So it doesn't take too much time. Canva. So I'm sure a lot of you are fans of Canva. I love Canva. It's really, really good. I use it to create album covers, as you know. So every time there's a guest, I get their image sent to me. I'll create a little album cover, and I tend to have a little bit of consistency with album covers. So when people see it on social, they know it's Industry Angel, they know it's one of Ian's posts. And I often have, obviously you can see there the logo. I always use Ian underscore Farrar, so people can know that I'm on Twitter. So if your guest does have a Twitter handle, use it if it's easy to see their name. And that goes with all my social posts, that little bit of graphic. I also use that on the website. You'll probably know if you look at industryangel.com/podcasts, you'll see each album cover will then click through to that person's webpage. So that works well. I've also been using some great, I've also been going live lately, which I'll come on to shortly. And I've just been using Canva to come up with some nice bits of graphics. Right, I'm going to talk a little bit about a great little tool for social posts called Headliner. Headliner will post something that looks like that on the far right. So it's literally taken a couple of minutes of your interview with a static background. So say that picture of me, which is my, that's my iTunes Apple Podcasts cover, isn't it? That's set in the background with a bit of text over the front, but that waveform will move and it's actually like a little video. So the sound will play and for a couple of minutes. Headliner's free. You upload your 1 or 2 minute bit of section of interview, and Headliner using artificial intelligence will scan it and it'll come up with a transcript for you, which you can edit yourself. And then you can change the color schemes and things like that. And then you've got a 1 or 2 minute video of a real key snippet, like the real gold. Sometimes if I'm listening to a podcast, listening to a guest, interviewing me, discussing with me, or maybe I'm doing a solo, and there's a minute where someone's just shared something absolute gold. I'm like, Headliner moment, I'm having that. And I will create a little snippet for it, put it on social. People will just can click play straight out of it. And then it's like a little bit of scarcity, isn't it? You've heard that minute, it's really good. I'm going to click through and hear the rest. So Headline's pretty cool. Libsyn have actually just started collaborating with Headliner. So I've never actually used it because I prefer to do it a bit more manually. But there might be a nice process of being able to create Headliner through Libsyn. So I think it's Headliner app you could search for. Have a play with that. It's just more way of engaging your audience. All this stuff, though, I know what you're thinking, it takes time. I'm fortunate enough to have somebody that works with me who helps me with this stuff. But if you've got time in your hands, this could be a bit of a passion project for you. This could be a bit of a hobby for you. So when you're sitting on an evening, half an eye on a movie on Netflix, half an eye could be on just creating bits and pieces like this, until you get used to it. Okay, I want to talk about measurement then. Now you can get hung up on vanity metrics on social media, can't you? So the only things that I would be looking to measure are these 3 things here. Downloads, obviously. So wherever you host, hopefully will be giving you download stats. Again, that's one reason to use a host. If you put this on your website, for instance, yes, I could listen to it, but you might not know how many people, unless you look at the stats of the WordPress site, maybe, and you look at the page views, but you're best off looking at downloads because obviously we know where those people view you in terms of location, countries, and how, what platform they use. So the stats are great. I went through them last week. So we want to be measuring downloads. You can't measure subscribers, okay? Apple will not tell you how many subscribers you have. Libsyn will not tell you how many subscribers you have. What they'll tell you is how many downloads you've had. So here's a little hack for you. If you're gonna release 10, 20 plus episodes, you're gonna see some metrics on there. One way of trying to find out how many subscribers you have is release an episode, let's just say Monday, okay? Let's just say August 1st, I'll release an episode. I'm going to tell nobody about it for 5 days. I'm not going to post on social. I'm not going to ask the guest to post. I'm not going to put any LinkedIn images or videos. I'm not going to put it on the website even. So the only way that people can listen to that is if they subscribe to the show. So that will give you a good indication over that 5-day period, because, and I say 5 days, it could be 3 days, could be whatever you want to use it, right? Whenever I download an episode, whenever I subscribe to shows and I download an episode, I might not listen to it on day one. It might take me a few days to get there. So if you give yourself 5 days a week or something like that, you'll know that the downloads are pure subscribers. That's it. So there's a little bit of a hack for you to play. Only thing it means is that you're not shouting about your episode for a week, which might not be something you can handle. So maybe do 2 or 3 days. You might get a bit of a heads up on how many people subscribe. Can you please send us the link for Headliner? Not sure if the correct spelling. Libsyn is Liberated Syndication, Libsin or SYN, Libsyn.com. You'll find it. If you just put Libsyn podcast and Headliner podcast, you'll find it, Beverly. Joe, nice idea. Free time homeschooling, a new startup, hardly have time for making coffee. Tell me about it, sister. I know this. Engagement then. So we're measuring downloads, right? We'll get that. Engagement is something which really gives you a good indication of you hitting the mark. If you're asking people to subscribe to your show and reach out, drop me a message, here's my email address, here's my Twitter handle, and you get nothing, you're probably thinking, wow, I'm falling on deaf ears here. So have a look at your engagement. If your engagement suddenly increases, there could be 2 things. It could be the fact that if you've collaborated with somebody like a guest and they've shared it, you've leveraged their audience. There could be the fact that someone shared your podcast who's got a little bit of influence behind them. Or actually the topic could be really hot, or the format of your show might have changed, and it might have created some higher engagement. So keep that in mind. These are some of the things that you've got to be watching for. Okay then, so featuring on other people's shows. We had a question about this and I said I would get back to this. This is a really good way of gaining subscribers and downloads to your show. I'm gonna say this could be a bit dangerous though, okay? Because lots of people reach out to me saying, can I come on the show? And I'm starting to see the majority of them are fellow podcasters, because what they're trying to do is leverage my audience. And it feels a bit cheap sometimes when people just literally scattergun approach you and say, I've got, it's a bit like broadcasting. I do this, I do that. I've got a great audience. Actually, they might even say I haven't got an audience. They might say, I'm an expert in business, right? I'm a business coach, expert in business. My passion is social media. I love to talk about corporate burnout. I love to give people tips on how they can grow their company from 0 to a 6-figure company, whatever, right? And you think, oh, they sound like a decent enough guest. When you Google them and you search through their stuff, what you'll find is that they're podcasters. And I think you're sneaky because you're trying to leverage my audience. So it's starting to become now a real technique to push your podcast through other people's. But I don't mind if it's transparent and authentic, where they say, look, Ian, I love your podcast. I've also got a podcast. I'm around about the same amount of episodes. We've probably got the same amount of listeners. Wouldn't it be great if we could collab? And I've done this before, where we do maybe a mutual show, and I'll post it on my podcast, and you could post it on yours. And then we're both sharing content. It's both content creation. I've done that with a friend of mine called Rob, and it works really well. So here's some tips to get on shows. So if you're not a podcaster right now, you might be a would-be podcaster, or you might be maybe a content marketer. You might be interested in business or just lead generation yourself. I'm going to give you some tips. And out of these tips, what you might find a little bit of gold. Okay then. So for me, and actually not just finding gold, just making sure that you protect your podcast from people who ask to come on, because it can be quite, it can be nice when people want to be on your show. You might think, oh, that was a nice little email I got. Somebody wants to come on my show. You've got to protect your audience, okay? You can't just have anybody on, all right? So the priority, as you can see there, is your audience. So if you're going to come on my show, you're going to have to reassure me that you're not going to jeopardize what I've worked hard to create and nurture. When you're contacting the host, avoid selling yourself on how great you are. Now, I actually got sick of this happening, and I created this, I think it's 20 points maybe. I like 20 points, don't I? I created this 20-point blog, and I posted it on LinkedIn as an article, and I also recorded it and posted it as an episode, because I was getting so sick of people just reaching out, trying to kind of use my audience. You see a lot of PR companies doing it now. If you're going to launch a book, what you might do is employ a PR company. PR companies will go on Apple Podcasts. They'll look at the topic, and they'll contact everybody in that particular topic saying, Sarah's just going to release a book. Would you like to be on your show? So if it's a two-way street and you're both getting some great content of it, that's fine. But just be so mindful that people might use your audience, okay? So if something sticks out, like point 2 here, if the person is really selling themselves and haven't mentioned me at all, I'm going to be a little bit nervous. So basically what we want to do is tell the host why you want to be on their show, why the audience would enjoy hearing from you, what previous shows you've been on, maybe send them some links, tell them what you enjoy about that particular host's approach. So we're proving that we're not scattergunning here, we're actually being more of a sniper. If somebody wants to reach out, what I really want to hear is what topics they can talk on. If somebody says, oh, Ian, I really want to be on your show, I love it. All right, okay. What are you going to talk about? I haven't got time to be going through the backwards and forwards of emailing. So what you want to hear is exactly what they can talk on. So these might be some great questions to ask your potential guests if someone's reached out, and just say, look, can you tell me what value you're going to share? What topic you're going to talk about? And really, why didn't you give me a heads up on some questions I could ask you? Because you can't be all things, can you? Sometimes you might have a guest on, and it's quite difficult sometimes if you don't know much about that topic, like the Brexit thing I gave you the day. So you might even say, look, why didn't you give me a heads up on maybe 5 or 6 questions I could ask you across the episode to help us out and get the best out of you? So again, a real targeted approach. So rather than kind of email 20 people, why don't you maybe hone it down into 5 or 10 and really go quite deep on trying to engage with that particular person. Again, if people are outsourcing this to a PR company, again, I've saw PR companies just go for the real quick and dirty option of just scattergunning approach. So I've often said to people, send PR companies this list and actually get them to brush up their skills on reaching out. This is a real key one. If you want to be on someone's show, you're going to have to be flexible with your time. And conversely, if you're on a show, if you've got your own show and you want someone to come on, they're giving their time for you. Yes, there might be a kickback out of it and they might get some promotion, but you're going to have to, sorry, that's point 6. You're going to have to, be pretty flexible. So you can see there, don't see this as an opportunity to advertise. This works both ways. This works from you as a host, okay? And this works for guests as well. As I said earlier on, if you're doing a half-hour show, I'm more than happy to have a minute or so of a guest kind of promoting what they're doing. It's fine, it's give and take. Quite similarly, if you're the guest and you're creating a show, don't bang on about your business or your value prop all of the time. Drop it in maybe once, twice, every other show maybe, or once, one show out of 3 maybe. but we're British, aren't we? We're quite humble, so you probably won't mention it like me. People don't even know what my company's called sometimes. But you know, this is not a sales pitch. Look to add value. So this is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to do today with you through Umi. We're trying to give you as much value as we can, some real gold that you can take away. And think about that on that podcast episode. How can you, as a guest on someone else's show, add value? And similarly, if someone's looking to come on your show, ask them, you know, what can you add? What real key takeaways are you going to give my audience? Because that's why they're here. Again, if you want to go on someone's show, say, look, I'm going to come on. I've got half an hour. I know this topic inside out. But at the end, is it okay if I just share a link to my book or my product? It's better to get it out there rather than stumble around it, you know, later on. It's give and take. It's a fair trade-off. Have fun. So, you know, we all pull our jeans on one leg at a time, don't we? You know, we're not precious about these things. So think edutainment, right? So we're educating, we're giving some real value, but let's have some fun along the way. This is a podcast. It doesn't have to be so stiff and straight. The medium is quite nice to listen to and intimate. So, you know, have fun. Again, this is something that you want to have a think about. Remember, we spoke about values last week. What does your show look like? What do you stand for? What do you like? What do you don't like? I gave an example of a chap who curses constantly, and that's actually a detriment to him being on stages as a speaker because people don't like even swearing. But he's a multi-millionaire; he doesn't care. So think about this with your podcast. Is it going to be a clean podcast, or is it going to be set as explicit? Are they going to be away? I think I told you on mine, I try not to swear. I certainly don't. If there's a guest who swears, sometimes it's fine. My mother's Irish, right? She drops them in all the time and it sounds good. So, you know, before the episode, just make sure you get all your ducks in a row and you tell them, you know, I don't like cursing, or will you be cursing? Supply the host with your bio, your photograph, your company logo, and social channels. Remember, you need to get something out of this, so be sure to share all that out. What I do for this is, rather than people coming and emailing backwards and forwards for my bios, for my company logos and things like that, I've got a web page on my personal website as a speaker or as a guest, and it's called Press Kit. And when you click the press kit, it's got a long bio, a short bio, it's got all my social links, it's got all my past history, and it's got a bunch of photos, and they can take anything they want. So it just saves that backwards and forwards. I just send them that link. So post interview, again, you know, it's nice to create a relationship. I've got a great relationship with people who I've never actually met just through podcasting, or who've been on my show, and we still keep in touch. And then subsequently I've been on their show. So, you know, thank them and be nice, you know, good karma is anything I can help you with. 14, so suggest guests. If you've been on a show and you've got on great with the hosts, you know, at the end of it, say, I tell you what it is, a friend of mine, Ian's a great guest. You might want to have him on the show. Conversely, when you finish with your guest, say, you know what, that was fantastic. You know so much about a particular topic. Is there anyone else you recommend I might reach out to? Because referrals work so well, don't they, across all facets of life. Sometimes when people email me to be on the show, they're a stranger to me. I don't know anything about them in terms of, the only thing I can find is what I search on Google about them. But if someone can refer you, if someone can say, yeah, I know Susie, she's such a rock star. She's been on a number of shows. She actually has her own show, and she'll have all the microphones and all the equipment. It'll be really good. And she's very credible and very relaxed on the show because she's, experienced. That would go well. So, you know, ask for referrals. 15, so review the show. Remember, we're asking people to review our show. So review others people's shows as well. If you review my show, in the shout outs bit at the start of my episodes, I'll say, you know, thanks so much, Joe. You've reviewed my show. I really appreciate that. If other people would like to review it, you know, head over to Apple Podcasts. I'd love to have a rate and review. So good karma, review their show. They might even reciprocate. So continue to look out for your host's content. Remember, we're creating this relationship and keep it going, because I've had people on the show, I call them a two-timers club because they've came on twice, but actually I've had people on the show 3 or 4 times. They might have been in a panel, they might have done a couple of episodes, they might have been on a special Christmas edition or something. So create that lasting relationship. Recommend the show to your friends and colleagues. So again, if you want to go on someone's show to leverage their audience, you can recommend their show via social. They won't forget it. I've had people retweeting my stuff who've got a good level of influence, and they'll say, listen to Ian's show, he's a good guy, you might learn something. I'm like, wow, you didn't have to do that. So thanks so much. Remember the HTML code so you can embed the podcast player. If you've been on someone's show, you want to shout about it, you want to be able to show that you've got knowledge about your particular chosen topic, ask for the HTML code. See, I tell you what it is, just pass me that if you want. I'll stick it on my blog. It'll count as a download for you, and it'll just give me some content for my blog, because it's quite hard to keep up with ideas to constantly create blog content. Link to the podcast, it's good for the SEO. We love Google Juice, don't we? We love links. So if you are taking a sponsor for your show, you'll be including all their links on your show notes. That's great for them, because they'll be over YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on your website, and they'll have loads of links. So remember, if you're trying to encouraging people who might be a bit of an influencer, say, look, if you come on my show, I'll be sure to create a web page, and I'll be linking to all your particular products and your website. And share this list. This is what I said on my blog. Please share this, because I was getting really disheartened about all these really atrocious pitches that we get right now. And I'm going to come on to monetization shortly, and I'll tell you what I've done because of this. Okay, going live, just like we are now. It really ups the ante going live. I was going live in front of the audience. If you remember when I talked about creating a tribe there on point 12, I was creating an event, and it really does up the ante, because what you're doing is, on an event, well, the ones I was doing was interviewing a guest, trying to talk to them and listen to them and think what the next question may be, and have an organic conversation with 100 people staring at you, and then also going live through Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So it really polishes your skills. But what I've been doing during lockdown is I've been going live, and I've been taking the audio. So for instance, again, using Canva, here's on April Fool's Day, I spoke with 16 guests. And I did 8 hours, 42 minutes, back to back, no breaks, full on, straight through, which really polished the skills. What this did was create 16 episodes, like batched produced episodes straight off the belt. It was great. The audience loved it, and we did it again on the 15th. Thanks, Julie. Julie was listening. We did it again on the 15th. We did the Dirty Dozen, and I just recently did it on the 19th of June there. And I reduced the time this time. I think I did it for 4 hours, because it really does take it out of you. Even now, I asked for a break on the hour there, because just to, take stock and grab a drink and just get some thinking time, some headspace. Doing 8 or 9 hours was intense, but you've got to stretch yourself in life, haven't you? And you learn from it. And I learned a bunch of stuff whilst I was going live. So now what I've been doing is, actually, let me play this. Let me see if this will work, because I'll just show you how fun it was. So what you can see there is the common theme is what we were smiling. We just had so much fun, and it created some great content. And what I did from that is I started producing, it got better and better, just like anything. I probably wouldn't listen to episode 1 of my podcast. But now you polish and you get better every time. So when I started live streaming using something called StreamYard, I was getting really great feedback of how good it looked. So this is Barney Waters. He's the president of the sneaker company in the States, K-Swiss. And you can see one of the listeners there, one of the viewers has asked a question, and I could throw their comment up on screen. So you're all commenting now in the chat box. Wouldn't it be great if I could throw Joe's comment there about seeing some familiar faces just on screen? You know, we're trying to get that. We're trying to get that engagement level with our tribe. We're mentioning their names. StreamYard that I've been using is fantastic because it's a bit like Zoom, if you like. You can have a number of people in the room, but I could also live stream through Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at the same time. And I think you can actually have 5 destinations on the paid version, which is about 20 quid a month, maybe. And what StreamYard does is it pulls in all the comments from those 3 channels into a nice little box on the side. And if the comment is of interest, I can throw it up on screen. I can show some nice banners scrolling along the bottom, and it just starts looking right professional. You know, at the end of the live stream, what I can do is I can then download the video, the MP4, which I can chop up. I can create some nice little snippets from it, or I can download the audio. And that's what I did when I went live with all those speakers. I literally downloaded a 9-hour audio file, an MP3, and then I stuck that into Audacity. You remember last week when we went through the editing? I popped that into Audacity, and now I've got 16 interviews there, which would have took me so long doing it weekly, you know. I literally had 16 interviews back to back. So all I did was just chop them all up, and they became podcast episodes. So it's a great way of producing, of batch producing, but also another great way of engaging your audience. So when we talked about launching, those conferences were great because I'd create some steam beforehand. I'd say, okay, on June, let's go back to the, let's go back to this one. You know, June 1st, I'm going to go live at 10 o'clock, and I'd create an event. I'd create an event on Facebook, and people could say interested or going. So I'm starting to create a little bit of noise a week before it happens, and people can put that in their diaries. They might look at the speakers and say, you know, I really want to hear from Polly at 12:15, so I'm going to make sure that's in my diary. You're creating that bit of steam beforehand. People will then be on the live, ready to go. So you might have 50, 100, 200, whatever it is, on the live straight away, and you're getting so much engagement from them. So that builds for a really good tribe. So I think I'm going to be doing a lot more of that. So whenever, you might remember, whenever I do remote shows, I was using Zencaster audio only. Now I've been saying, look, we can do audio only, or we can live stream. We can live stream with a bit of software that I've got, which is just through a web browser. And we also will go through YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. So we'll be getting engagement live from people who can ask questions. So your audience can actually ask questions live to you rather than just listen to you, you know, a day or two later. Remember that guest or you yourself want as much exposure as you can. So quite often, if the guest's a prevalent speaker and they've got some good experience, they'll say, yeah, let's go live. Why not? Let's have some fun. So they've got a couple of choices there then. You can either interview remotely and just have it saved as an MP3, which you then upload to Libsyn in your own time, and there's nothing spoiling. Or why don't you press the button and go live? And that's what I'd love to see you do that. So if you are going to do this, reach out to me. I'll tell you a bit about StreamYard. I think I've actually got an affiliate link which gives you a little bit of credit. You could subscribe. There's actually a free version. Go with the free version. Have a play with it. What it doesn't give you is this branding. You can see it'll just have their logo, so you can create your own branding if you pay for the paid version. So it's so engaging. It's so much fun. Joe, you're planning to move on to online teaching. It seems like a great service. It is a great service just because it gives you multi-channel availability, and it pulls all the comments into one particular place. And honestly, I love it. I get such a buzz, and especially today, you know, with all you commenting through chat, it's quite a lonely journey. I've said this before, being on the other side of the microphone, you don't know who's listening. But when you're sharing the experience with everybody else, it's such fun. And so, yes, I would encourage people to look at StreamYard. Again, I can put these links in the show, in the show notes, on the chat box later if you wish. Now, I touched upon this physical event. Now, you remember I've been going live in front of an audience. Once you start building your tribe, this is great. And here's some of the reasons why. It could be a networking event. Now, there's lots of networking events in our region. Why don't you approach somebody who runs a networking event and say, look, you often have speakers on stage. You might have bacon butties on in the morning. You might have a beer and pizza evening on the nighttime. Why don't I do a live podcast interview with somebody? And I've took this on the road. I've done this at Sunderland in South Tyneside. I do quite a lot here in South Tyneside for the council. We call them tech talks. So I interview tech leaders. So Sunderland, Newcastle, I've done this. I've done it at Campus North. I did it at Newcastle Startup Week. I was at the Time Theatre. On that image there, you can see me with Anne Cleves, who's the author of the Vera books. We put a show on, 2 shows at the live theatre for people, which was fantastic because Anne sold a load of books, went through live and engaged with the audience. So it's win-win. But you can see that you get instant feedback as well. So you're actually meeting your listeners, and they'll come up to you and say, hey, episode 17 with that lady, she was amazing. And I'll say, well, why? Why was she so good? Well, the content was fabulous. And what I liked about it was the fact you didn't butt in, you let her speak, or the fact that, you know, something might have changed in that episode and you're getting feedback. A chance to promote. So we've said this before, you've got a business outside of podcasting. So this is your chance to share it. You know, you can maybe talk about your value proposition, talk about your journey with your particular business, promote something. You might have some merch you could sell. You might have a course that you wanted to push. So this just gives you a bigger platform. Social sharing, you know, when you go to network events, you're taking selfies, don't you? You're pulling your phone out, you're tagging yourself that you're there, you're tagging yourself that this is a particular great event, you're loving it, you can't wait for next time. You're going to get a lot of shares. When we do some of the live shows, it's funny because it's pretty stressful when you're there because, as I said before, you're going live through various channels, you've got the audience, you're trying to work with the interviewer, and it's full on and your phone blows up, right? It's like, if you ever want to speak to a speaker, don't treat them when they're on stage and expect a reply because they can't, but they will look at it later on. Your phone notifications just go wild. So you've got lots of social steam happening at a live event. As you can see, people will take photographs. A good friend of mine, you might know Gavin Forster, he comes along to my shows. Gav brings his cameras, he takes absolutely fantastic photographs. They then go on the Facebook page as the event, and then people start tagging themselves in the picture, which then will increase your audience. And as you can see, their polished skills. There's nothing better than going live in front of an audience through social media, talking about a topic that you're not really up to speed on, and talking to somebody you've never met before. you will get really good. So we're just coming to the end of our presentation. So be sure to think about your questions because we've got about 10 minutes at the end. Most people who listen to podcasts listen to multiple shows. Okay, I don't know. I could show you my phone now, but I'm probably subscribed to about, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 shows. So there is more to go around. Don't worry about the fact that somebody else has a better podcast than you. Don't compare yourself, just get it done. You know, we've had 4 hours almost together over these last couple of weeks. I really hope that you're going to start and launch your podcast if you haven't already, because there is enough to go around, okay? I will support you. Umi will support you. Tag me, email me. I'll give you as much support as you want, because I want us as a community to start really doubling down on content and supporting each other and having a community of podcast hosts. Now, what I would urge you is don't get too hung up on making money, okay? You can see what I'm saying there is build a business behind your podcast. You can make money because of your podcast, not from it, okay? Don't get too hung up about, so how do I make money? When I first started podcasting 5 years ago, I'd get asked this all the time. Well, how do you make your money, Ian? Well, I've got a business called Far North. Well, what's the podcast for? Well, because it's a passion project. I love interviewing people. I love business. I'm learning. So when I'm interviewing people, I'm learning. I've got an opportunity to speak to some real rock stars, and I couldn't just pick the phone up to those people, but because I've got a podcast, I can then suddenly now speak to them. And what happens is people will start to want to do business with you because you have a podcast, and because they've heard your voice. You become a bit of an influencer. Maybe you might have a larger audience and people might want to leverage that. So don't get too hung up about it. You can ask people to donate. There's something called Patreon. If you just do a search on that, you can ask people to donate, $2, $4 a month through Patreon. If you get a decent level of subscribers, that might just help pay for your Libsyn hosting, for instance. You could stick a donation page on your webpage using PayPal, like a PayPal button. I never asked for money, but I just started doing it when I was during lockdown on those real epic conferences I was pulling, because I had a few. I had a few hard costs there, and I thought, well, maybe stick a PayPal button on. I do listen to some shows where they're constantly pushing that, make a donation to make sure this show keeps on continuing. Drop me a donation. So, you could do that if that's your thing, then fine. And you might get to a point where you get enough downloads that you might have someone who wants to sponsor your show. Now, remember, they'll get a lot of links through your social channels and through where your podcast's hosted. So for a search engine optimization point of view, it might be of interest for people to start sponsoring your show, or actually just to give back. People sponsor football teams, don't they? From a corporate social responsibility point of view. I would love if a company reached out to me and said, Ian, I love what you do. I'm not bothered about talking about us, but I want you to continue. Could I sponsor your show for a few episodes? That would be great, wouldn't it? And just to give something back. So you never know, some people might actually start sponsoring you just to make sure that you continue on. And then, when you hit the big time, you're going to be on Joe Rogan anyway. So, don't worry. So then what I'm going to urge you to do is not to fade out. Okay. I've alluded to this term pod fade numerous times. The average number of podcast episodes is 7 because people get they worry about how long it's going to take them, and they don't put the time in initially. They don't understand that you're going to have, as you can see, their patience with it. You're not going to be an overnight success. Quite often when people are an overnight success, you don't realize there's been 20 years behind them already to get there. So don't put too much pressure on yourself to become something. To be successful success is different from everybody's level of success. Everyone's opinion of success is different. You might be successful if you have 10 listens, that's fine. Whatever you want to target yourself. Please be you. Podcasting for me is a passion. I'm sharing my passion. So if your passion is schooling, online classrooms, yoga, whatever it is, you'll know that topic inside out because it's your passion. Authenticity is key right now. I've said this a few times across these sessions. Be you. Do not try to replicate anybody else who has a podcast. It will not work. You'll be living a lie. You'll trip up. So just have your own style. Don't try and replicate someone else's style. Just be you. Put the time aside. As I've said, this will take you a day if you're going to do a weekly show. So, if you can't do a weekly show and it's a monthly show, just be mindful of that and ask for help. ask for help from people to share it. Ask for, other podcast hosts in your particular genre to say, how did you find it? How did you launch? We've shared some great content over this last 4 weeks. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I've tried to give you warts and all. I've tried to give you behind the scenes and give you everything. And I do believe if you look at some of these podcasting courses that are out there for $1,000 or $2,000, I believe we've shared some real great content with you over these last 2 weeks that won't give you much more. So just believe in yourself and just have fun. You have a story. Okay, you have experience that nobody else has. Nobody else can be you. So share your stories. We all learn from stories. Shape your messaging through a story and it'll work. Create killer content. Remember, don't just push something out for the sake of it, okay? If you don't have an episode that week, don't get too hung about it. We want real killer content. And what I'm saying there is go all in. Don't play with this. If you want to succeed, remember what success is like to you is different from me. You have to go all in. You've got to commit. I think there's nothing worse than fading out, because what you'll do is you'll have a great launch. I'm going to create a podcast show. It's going live on August 1st. It's going to be this, this, and this. And then come October, you've faded out. And then someone will say, hey, well, Peter, what happened to that show? Oh, yeah, it didn't really work too good. If you're going to go all in, you have to commit, commit the time. And most importantly, have fun. This does not have to be a real toil. If it's starting to get that way, then it's not for you. You've got to enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy it, you won't do it. So I really want you to have fun with it. It is so rewarding. It's so rewarding when people reach out. It's so rewarding when people tell you that. One chap said that he was a victim of an arson attack. His business was burned down. He listened to one of my podcasts and he picked himself back up and he started his business again. I took so much from that, and I've got numerous stories like that. I've reached out when I needed help once, and I recorded an episode in my car when I was feeling a bit low. I got so much positivity and support from people, sharing that they'd been in a similar circumstance. So these are your friends. This is your tribe. You build it. You have fun. You be authentic and just enjoy it. So that's come to the end of our presentation over these last couple of weeks. I hope you've enjoyed it. You've got a few more minutes. If you want to populate anything in the chat box, you've got me. Thanks so much, Jane. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it as well. I've really enjoyed everyone interacting as well. Zena, I noticed you'd hooked up with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. So thanks so much for that. I love creating relationships and I love meeting new people, especially now since we're all locked down. So thanks so much for reaching out. It's lovely to connect with you. So again, we're coming to the end. Any questions, I'm more than happy. Rory, I don't know if you want to jump in and if there's any housekeeping at the end, or maybe promote some of the other workshops that UMI have. I know there's so much coming your way to get involved with.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ian. Yes, we've got a webinar coming up this Friday, which is on CRM systems, the link between marketing and sales, which has been delivered by George McKee from All My Systems, a really good CRM provider and expert. But also Jonathan Scott from Northern Media, which are a real top design agency and media company. So one certainly not to be missed, and I'll be able to share the information with you very soon.
Good stuff. Thanks, Graham. Thanks, John. Thanks for your comments, Julie. Alistair, yeah, I remember you from last week as well. You've been quiet in this one, Alistair. So yeah, thanks for all your comments. I might have a couple of bits and pieces to throw in the show notes. This is, I'll pop this in the chat. This is a web page that I have saying get featured. I think that was my 20-point strategy on how to get featured on people's shows. I do have something else I wanted to share. It might have been around StreamYard. Am I okay to pop a link in on StreamYard, Rory? It is an affiliate link, but it does give people credit.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's StreamYard. you might want to take a look at that. Which there's a free version, so you don't have to take the affiliate link. Beverly, there was a disclaimer. Thanks so much for that. Let me find that particular page. Again, just go to the page, which is actually hidden from my website. It's not accessed by a drop-down menu, but you've got the link right here. You can see on that one, I've got my Calendly link. I've got some tips and tricks for people to make sure they've got the right microphones. But importantly, as you've said there, it's got the podcast release form text. Pinch that text, change it, do what you wish, and create your own Word doc, and just make sure that you CYA. What's this one here? How important do you think it is getting the right name for your podcast, or can this be changed later? I think it's Alan. I'm not sure, but it's cutting the rest of your name off. I would try to get your name, put a lot of effort into your name up front. I wouldn't try and change it later. I would really make sure you nail that. I think what I said last week was make sure it does what it says on the tin. So try to put what your podcast is about, so Industry Angel Business Podcast. Try to make sure that's in there. Is that you already putting all your lovely...
Yeah, that's right. Just thought it'd be really helpful to put that in at the end there. But yeah, separate links for separate regions. Leeds City region, Digital Knowledge Exchange, of course, and then County Durham, the Digital Drive.
Good stuff. So just to say again, if anybody wants to hook up or engage on social, I'm a huge fan, so I'm there. I'm really excited to be part of your journey as well.
Perfect, brilliant. So have we got any more questions coming in, or is that just about everything for today?
Yeah, I think that's about everything for today. It's been really good. Some great questions. Questions are great for me because it helps shape the discussion, because I don't know what they're worried about or what they're feared about. And I think Graham says there, to really help his journey in fears. Do not be fearful, press the button.
Brilliant. Well, if that's everything, then I'd just like to say a really big thank you, Ian, for delivering such a valuable two-part podcast series. It's been absolutely eye-opening. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rory. I've really enjoyed it, and thanks everybody who's took part in the last 2 weeks. Really appreciate it.
Perfect. Brilliant.